The Sons of the Dragon King. A Chinese Legend. Ed Young. Athenaeum Books for Young Readers. New York, London, Toronto, Sydney. Author's note. Long ago, Chinese civilization consisted of many tribes. Each tribe believed it was the descendant of a totem animal, similar to that of the Northwest Native Americans. There were, for instance, the people of the swallow and the people of the snake. Over time, however, despite centuries of conflict and strife, these tribes merged together and came to be ruled under one animal, the Dragon King. The Dragon King is believed to possess a number of features from a variety of animals, including the eyes of the hare, the claws of the eagle, the mane of the lion, the head of the camel, the neck of the snake, the scales of the carp, and the antlers of the deer, combining the many attributes of China's tribes into one triumphant animal. According to legend, when the Dragon King's 9 sons were born, each was as different from the others as the king's features were distinct. And each had a little trouble discovering his own unique talent. It was up to the Dragon King to ensure his royal sons didn't wreak havoc in his kingdom but instead served his people. He clearly did a very good job. The images of his sons can still be found decorating many Chinese objects to this very day. Different regions of China have different tellings of favorite folktales, and many overlap. The one thing that never varies in the Dragon King folktales is that the king always had 9 sons. The Sons of the Dragon King is the version I'm most fond of. In ancient China, it was said that the Dragon King had 9 sons, each one immortal, each one very different from the next. As they grew older, each of the sons moved to a different region of the country to find his place in the world, far away from the Dragon King's watchful eye. Alas, it was not long before unsettling rumors made their way to the king. The first came from the tutor of his first son, Bei Shi. "Your son does nothing all day, nothing at all, but challenge the peasants in competitions to see if anyone is stronger than he is." "This does not seem befitting the son of a king," the tutor exclaimed. Indeed it did not. Indeed, such behavior from the son of a king could not be tolerated. Bei Shi was meant to discover his talent and make a contribution to his country. So the Dragon King decided to visit his son to set things straight. Disguised as a common peasant, he traveled to the region where Bei Shi lived. There he saw Bei Shi carrying an enormous weight on his back, racing another man who also carried an enormous weight on his back. "You see," cried the tutor. "This is how your son uses his time." The Dragon King was dismayed. He was about to call out to his son and scold him when he suddenly had a thought. Perhaps Bei Shi would do well in a position that used his great strength. He beckoned Bei Shi to him and told his son of his idea. Bei Shi, pleased that his father had recognized his great strength, readily agreed. And to this day, Bei Shi may still be found carrying the weight of the large columns that support the roofs of China's greatest buildings. The Dragon King had just returned to his palace when an old servant from the home of his second son, Chiwen, ran into the throne room. "1,000 pardons, Your Highness, but I must tell you that your son Chiwen does nothing all day, nothing at all, but stand upon his roof and stare into the distance." "This does not seem befitting the son of a king," the servant exclaimed. Indeed it did not. Indeed, such behavior from the son of a king could not be tolerated. The Dragon King slipped his peasant disguise back on and set off for the region where Chiwen lived. As he approached his son's house, he saw someone standing high on the roof, gazing intently into the distance. It was Chiwen himself. The king watched, and his son never moved, except to slowly turn his head back and forth. He seemed to the king to be extraordinarily lazy, and the king was about to shout out to him when he suddenly had a thought. Perhaps Chiwen was suited for a position that made use of his watchfulness. He called his son down from the roof and told him of his idea. Chiwen, pleased that his father had recognized his hawk-like eyesight, readily agreed. And to this day, Chiwen may still be found at the tops of buildings, a sentinel searching the distance for potential danger. Before he could return home, the Dragon King was nearly knocked down by a group of villagers running toward him with their hands covering their ears. They had come from the direction of his son Pulao's house. "Your son," they cried. "He does nothing all day, nothing at all, but make the most monstrous noises. This does not seem befitting the son of a king." Indeed it did not. Indeed, such behavior from the son of a king could not be tolerated. The king hurried to his son's house, where Pulao bellowed from within. The king thought for a moment. Pulao really didn't have a bad voice, it was just terribly loud. Perhaps he was musical. So the king covered his ears and went into the house to tell his son of his idea. Delighted, Pulao began practicing more earnestly than ever. And to this day, Pulao is often seen adorning musical instruments, no doubt assuring that their sound will be loud and true. Pleased, the Dragon King stopped at the home of Bayan, his fourth son, on his way back to the palace. There he watched from a short distance as Bayan resolved a dispute between two merchants by carefully weighing their goods on a scale. Wise and eloquent, he settled their disagreement and sent them on their way. Clearly, the king decided, Bayan must serve the cause of justice. He spoke to his son, who readily agreed, pleased that his father thought him wise. And these many years later, Bayan may still be seen supervising the doorways to the great prisons, ensuring that only the guilty are locked inside. As he returned to his palace, the Dragon King was stopped by the caretaker of his fifth son,